oftentimes when we face some mental health struggles, we face the stigmas like this: just get over it, think better thoughts, or pray more, or have more faith. And sometimes that's not enough. So what do we do in those situations? And the reality, we can look to the scriptures and we see time and time again of those who face struggles with their mental health. We think of David. All through the Psalms, he shares that, he laments that, all the things that happened to him. Elijah in 1 Kings, we think of Job and his experiences of losing his kids and his family, what that all meant to him and his struggles, the battles he went through. They're all through the Gospels as well. We see it there over and over again. So today we're gonna explore this. How do we challenge ourselves? How do we ask those tough questions? And how do we get help with those things? And so we're gonna dive into this conversation today and we're gonna see where it goes. I got like 12 questions, but we make it to 2. Who knows what's gonna happen today? And so we'll see how it goes. This is all live. We didn't practice, we didn't rehearse this. I gave them some questions in advance, but they're coming up here just to share their wisdom. So let's just start with introducing themselves.
I'm John, one of the pastors here at the church, teaching Grief Share. That's what I do.
I'm Beth Ann Dorman. I'm the president and CEO of For All Seasons, your area's largest mental health and rape crisis center. I'm a clinician by training, but I now lead the agency.
Good morning. My name is Wala-Neh. By education, I'm a social worker, and by profession, I'm a therapist. And I also have a background in ministry, and I also am certified as a health and nutrition life coach. And I work at Peace of Mind Mental Health in the clinic and the school-based system as well, doing individual, families, and couples.
I'm Bill Serrato. I want to first thank everyone who's been so kind and welcoming. I'm new to the church, to me and my family. I am a child and adolescent as well as general psychiatrist, and I am the medical director at For All Seasons. Beth Ann.
Perfect. So we're going to jump into a lot of stuff today. Questions that came in that we experienced throughout the year or years. People that have asked these things. We kind of grabbed this information, threw it on some paper, and asked these questions today. And so I want to ask a question that I think a lot of us deal with, especially with our children, and how to have this conversation around our screen time. And so what role does screen time, phones, TV, computer, play in our mental health struggle? Anyone want to tackle that one to start with?
I'll start.
Okay.
So screen time, let's be clear. So screen time can have good effects and it can have bad effects. There are times where kids need a break, where parents need a break, and it's okay if we are talking about in small doses. Where we see that screen time begins to impact children especially our teenagers, is that their brains are still growing. And so where we might think about a child at the age of 15 or 18 with a fully developed brain, the reality is it's still growing to the age of 25 or 27. And so screen time can impact anxiety, especially in a time right now. I know that we've had conversations around what is on the screen, where there is a break in maybe how someone is looking at information. So if you're someone, this is adults too, if in the political climate, if there's discourse in the community and you're spending too much time in screen time, it can amp up anxiety. It can impact the amount of cortisol, which is the chemical that goes into your body when you are at unrest. And it can also heighten anxiety for our kids and leave children in a space of unknown.
There's a book I recently started reading, and it was a general practitioner, a doctor, and a counselor, a therapist who I'd seen recommended. It was through a friend of mine, his church. They were doing a discussion on mental health, and it's called The Anxious Generation by Jonathan Haidt. And I think I've got a little one, and I think we all know like too much cell phone usage can get you all ramped up, doom scrolling in the news, even for adults. But the evidence in there is just absolutely staggering on the effect of our kids, as Beth Ann was saying, with just the development of the brain. Particular preteen, teen, and there's a massive emphasis even on girls in particular, the impact on them. And we're gonna look at it a little bit more actually next week. But the correlation between when certain aspects of technology were invented and introduced into the public, and the numbers, the graphs on depression, anxiety, self-harm, suicide are staggering. They line up in a way that's really terrifying. But so yeah, it absolutely has a significant impact.
I'm just going to tag one more thing in, because I think the other thing that screen time does is children and adolescents, the brain is created it is initiated that we should be able to be creative. And when we are on too much screen time, we hear children say things like, well, I don't know what to do if I'm not watching TV, or I don't know what to do, I don't know how to have a conversation. And so the brain's really hungry for that creativity piece. And if so much screen time is taking up what we would consider downtime, the lack of creativity can really impact the child's ability to be able to think freely and be able to think in a different mode that isn't feeding information but is helping to be creative.
I agree with what Beth Ann was saying with the pros and cons. And when I look at screen time, I think of an article I was reading recently, and the title of the article was "The Dangers of Donating Your Dopamine to your phone and not your friends." The dangers of donating your dopamine to your phone and not your friends. And the article talked about the concept that when we're on the screen, when we're engaged in these activities on our tablets, our computer, there's a pleasure sensors in our brains that are activated. However, afterwards, we feel depleted. We feel exhausted. And when we're exhausted, sometimes we feel like we don't have the energy to socialize. We don't have the energy to go out because we've donated all of our dopamine to our phones and not our friends. And another aspect of the screen time, I think we were touching on it earlier, is the social aspect. I've done a few social skills groups at Peace of Mind, and you see that with some of the younger generation, those who maybe are very involved on their screens, they may be lacking or stagnating in their childhood development where they should be developing those social skills, learning those social cues, because they're used to communicating and engaging in the discourse of friendship through technology. So there's that complication with that.
So I imagine most of these questions could be a couple hours in and of themselves. But John and Beth Ann and Wala-Neh, I think, did a great job of talking about all of the dangers. But screens aren't going away. Social media is not going away. And that's part of how our kids are going to be communicating from probably future generations as well. So some of the positive things that you can do to limit what they're really talking about is how these companies have mastered variable reinforcement, which is basically you get these pop-ups, these notifications on your phone. One time you look at it, it's something that you really did want to look at, but 5 times over the course of the next day or two, not really something you needed, and then it'll be something that you wanted to look at. It's the same concept with slot machines, and that triggers and reinforces the brain to want to do that. So I always tell parents to start with just asking your kids or just turning off the notifications. Turn off all notifications, and they can actually just use what they want to do. Try to limit screen time to 2 to 3 hours a day. Incorporate things like family screen time. These are just practical things you can do to start to experience the benefits of screens and in this interconnected technological world that we're all living in now that's not going away.
And to add something, what Dr. Serrato was saying in terms of setting limits, and to piggyback on what Beth Ann was saying about childhood development and brain, I think about a particular case that I had maybe some years ago at one of the elementary schools, and the child's diagnosis was ADHD, and we were working with trying to help their hyperactivity in school and at home. And I made a suggestion to the parents, and I was glad that they followed through. So the suggestion, even though it seemed difficult, was for them to cut out or eliminate the video games for 30 days. And they went through that process, and they were surprised to see the changes in their little boy's behavior, the attention, because these parents, I mean, for some kids, medications works wonders. These parents did not want to use medications, and I respected that. So I said, well, let's eliminate the video games. When they come home, do a family activity together instead of playing on the Xbox, the PlayStation. And they went through that process of cutting it out for 30 days, and they saw immense benefits.
So as you know, we could spend here the next hour just on this one topic. And we are looking at the idea of doing a fuller time to share a little bit longer in the future. But for today, we're going to kind of move through some of these questions. So recently, I've been reading some books, just my own lifestyle, my own health, trying to figure out, with my mental health, what role does like exercise and diet, water, sleep play in that? Because I find when I lack in those areas, the thoughts come harder into my mind and into my body, and I want less to do with those things. And so in your experience, what role plays in those things like exercise and, diet and water and, sleep as far as how we deal with our thoughts, emotions, feelings, anxiety, stress?
Sure. It plays a huge role in it, and to sort of just build on the social media or just being on screens in general. If you're on screens too close to bedtime, the blue light can start to affect melatonin production, and then your natural circadian rhythms start to get off. You have poor sleep. Next thing you know, you're more irritable. You have decreased ability to deal with frustration. It starts to look like you can't concentrate. And then possibly, okay, what else is going on with this child? Well, really, they might just need, more regular sleep. And same with the same thing with adults. We'll see it, coming through in different aspects of their life.
And there's really an aspect of when we look at exercise, when we're looking at ways that we are increasing the dopamine in our body, that is the chemicals that are helping us to find joy. It is the way that we are taking care of ourselves. I think it's really important when we think about the importance of not only exercise and sleep, but also food nutrition. So, there really is something to be said about the hangry that people get, because if our bodies are not being fed the proper amount of sleep, the proper amount of food, how exercise shows up, what our kids are eating. Did your child have a sleeve of cookies for breakfast, or did your child have something with protein or a piece of fruit? All of those things make a difference. And if we think about when we are not showing up as our best selves, sometimes it's also about fitting in the self-care that we need to be able to say, okay, if I can't get a half-hour workout in today, can I take a 5-minute walk? And simply just being able to give our brains some space when we are feeling like I can't concentrate, or maybe I haven't gotten enough food today, maybe I haven't gotten enough sleep. Part of it also is about proactively thinking about, okay, if I'm in a space where I don't have enough sleep, what do I need in order to move my energy forward? Or if I can't go in a direction of, I'd like to do all of these things today, what's one thing that we can start to do for ourselves that starts to make the difference as it comes to the exercise, the self-care? Because I can tell you self-care is really important. I suck at it as an individual. It's not something I do well. But we have to practice it. We have to be able to sit back and say, how am I going to make these changes in small doses? If you can't commit to doing it for 30 days, try it for 5 and see how you do.
And I like what Pastor Dave said about the interconnectedness of everything. And I think that's a theme that really is highlighted as we have this interdisciplinary panel with various aspects of the mental health profession. I think about, and tying it back to faith, I think about Genesis. Going back to Genesis, where we see God creating mankind, humanity, and we see, in Genesis it says that God took the dirt of the earth and breathed into man the breath of life, and man became a living soul. And in that passage, we see those 3 aspects of our being. We see our body being created from the dirt of the ground. And when you look at the chemical elements that are in our bodies, all of those are found in the dirt. And we see the spirit, our spirit, the breath of God. And then we see the soul, which is the merger of the spirit and the body. So I think one other aspect is, as we see our creation, that we're interconnected, we're body, soul, and spirit, and our health is also interconnected, meaning that the health of our body impacts our spirit and our soul and our emotions as well. Because it's hard to feel well in your mind when your body is not functioning properly. So although we may experience our feelings in our soul, they're expressed in the body. They're expressed through the chemicals in the body. So the interconnectedness, I think it's a really good aspect to remember, because sometimes society will segregate or will separate the body from the spirit and the soul, but they're all interconnected.
Okay, let's move on to the next question. This is a big one that comes in oftentimes. I often struggle with anxiety and constantly worrying about the what ifs of life. What can I do to help reduce these thoughts and begin to think differently? And how do I turn off my brain to think differently?
Well, something Beth Ann talks about a lot through teachings with Brene Brown is the story that you tell yourself, right? So it's often an irrational story, but to you it's very, very rational. So relating that to how mental health can help, there are specific therapies. Cognitive behavioral therapy is one of them, where it teaches you how to get off of that, what we call an automatic negative irrational thought that we all have. Something bad might happen, we might automatically think the worst, catastrophize it. And then from there, this waterfall of negativity starts to happen, and then symptoms start to come out through our body with that, with panic and anxiety, and we just want to shut down and get away from it. But what cognitive behavioral therapy can teach you is how to recognize that automatic negative thought as irrational quicker, so that you can stop that cascade from happening.
And I think one of the pieces when we're talking about stopping the record is being mindful and being able to find ways to stay in the moment. So breaking up what is happening within the thoughts, there's something that's called the threes, where you can look for three things, you can hear three sounds, and move three parts of your body. You don't need anything, it's not like you have to have a book with you, you don't have to take anything with you. And in that moment, it gives your brain a break from those thoughts. The other thing that's important to think through in terms of mindfulness is, as Dr. Serrato said, the story that you're telling yourself, it gives you a chance to sit back and say, okay, hang on, does this make sense? Let me think about this. Here's where my thoughts are going, but let me think about this, what I know. And in all of this, one of the things that we carry with us that is so helpful is our breath. Simply being able to sit and take a breath, giving yourself the ability to take a deep breath in and a deep breath out. On the table outside, there's a bunch of resources that we have put out for you, and it's called boxed breathing, one of the resources we have. Just being able to take a deep breath in and hold it for a couple minutes and let a deep breath out gives our brains a chance to reset. And these are things that we have to practice. The more that we practice these things when we aren't in a heightened state of anxiety, the more that we then are able to pull from what we call our toolbox when we're in those moments of heightened anxiety. And sometimes it's simply just even saying, okay, pay attention. If you're someone who can think and sit, okay, when I'm in an anxious state, I feel it in my chest, I feel it in my shoulder, I feel it in my stomach. Paying attention and being mindful of what's happening with our body gives us the ability to say, okay, self, we're heading in that anxious space. And so even if, you can Google meditation for a minute. If you're going into a meeting, if you're going into a hard conversation, if you're finding yourself in a space where you're having those racing thoughts, simply sitting for a minute and giving yourself the ability to ground yourself, feel the back of the chair, feel your feet on the ground. It gives us a chance to reset our system. It doesn't mean that the anxiety is not going to come back, but these are some of the practices as we talk about that the more that we can get into a habit of, maybe you're going to go to prayer. Maybe you're going to take a walk around the house and say, okay, I see these three things, I can hear these three things, I'm moving my feet, I'm stretching my arms, and I'm closing my eyes when I sit back down in my chair. So really the craft is called mindfulness, and it has been something that has really been able to help us stay in the here and now, not worry about what's to come, not worry about what has happened, but sit present to be able to think through in a way where we are able to check the story that we're telling ourselves or check the facts that come into our thoughts.
So for me, I've been honest in sermons about this is the thing that gets me is anxiety, and to the degree where it's put me in an emergency room a couple of times. And so there's a lot of things that I've learned over the years in going to different counselors about how to navigate it and walk through it. And Bethany was saying being mindful, meditation. There's one passage of scripture that I will meditate on, especially when I feel it in my body, that it's coming on. It's Psalm 46:10. Be still and know that I am God. And I will pray that very slowly. And then I will pray it and just take the last word off the sentence every time. And so you end up praying, be still and know that I'm God. Be still and know that I am. In the Old Testament, that's how God refers to himself, simply as I am. Be still and know that. Be still and know. Be still and nothing else. Be still, be. And I will pray that. If I have to pray it 30 times, I'll pray it 30 times. And I just meditate on it. And I continue to go over that passage of scripture and remind myself that God is here and to be still and to trust and put my hope in him. I've learned from counselors that there is nothing I can do about the past. I can't live there. I can't change anything. I can learn from it, but I can't do anything about it anymore. And C.S. Lewis describes the future as unreality. But if you struggle with anxiety, what you found yourself doing is living in unreality, and then you experience real emotions though. Real fear, real anxiety, real depression, real anger about something that has never happened. And so one of the things for me is I do have to come back and have to remind myself to come home and to be here. And everything Beth Ann said, I do all those things. If there's been times in the past where I was struggling with anxiety and I'm about to preach and everything in me wants to just like elbow Dave and say, you're up, bud. And I'll do the thing. I'll be like, there's a welcome sign. There's the colorful glass over there. I can feel the chair underneath my hand. And I'll do those things just to remind myself that I'm here. I'm not back there. I'm not in the future. I'm right here, right now. And I'm okay right now. I'm okay in this moment. And so those things I remind myself. And another one that has been enormously helpful is I will verbally say out loud, you're okay, or that didn't happen. That's not real. This didn't happen. Something didn't happen to my daughter. Something didn't happen to me. I don't have this medical diagnosis. And I will say out loud to remind myself, and I will say it, and I'll hear it with my ears, and it helps to bring me back to here because I'm saying something and hearing something. And those are things, again, Bethany keeps saying about just being present, be here now. Those are all things and tools that help to just kind of bring me back, rein me back into just be present and be here, and I'm okay right here in this moment and right now. So,
speaking about the brain that Dr. Serrata was sharing earlier, I think about how, like, we live in a fast-paced world and there's so much information, and sometimes we're not always aware that the content that we're taking in, whether it's screen time, television, music, the news, that's being stored in our brains. So even though in the moment you might be listening to the news and you're not thinking, well, I'm worried about this or this is bothering me, but your brain is storing that. So one thing practical that we could do is kind of ask yourself or do a self-assessment. Are there areas where I'm taking in content that may be negative, that may subconsciously be triggering my anxiety? And this might be, more involved, but are there people in my lives that maybe are negative? Maybe when I'm around this person, they're pouring negativity into me or they're taking out positivity out of me, because our social circle has a big impact on our mental health. And just to tie in the spiritual aspect, I think about the concept of neuroscience in terms of neuroplasticity, the brain's ability to rewire itself. And in the Bible it says, as a man thinketh in his heart, so is he. And then in Romans chapter 8, we learn, be ye transformed by the renewing of your mind. So there's that connection in terms of we can change our thoughts, we can make a choice to repeat and form those new habits. and our brain will follow. It will rewire itself. Even though the older you get, the longer it takes to rewire. But God has given our brains that amazing ability to rewire itself as you're thinking positively.
We're going to keep on moving. I'm going to kind of join some questions together here just to kind of help. I think there's a few that I really want to touch on. The one I think so often that gets so much stigma, that I've had so many friends, moments, is seeking professional help, even medication, okay with me as a Christian? And I think that's a question I want you guys to kind of help unpack a little bit. You know, we deal with these issues. Is it okay for me to go to a counselor? Is it okay to me to become medicated to help me in that journey?
I can start with that. Whenever someone comes to me and is struggling with that, I'd like to relate it to high blood pressure, hypertension, because there are two things that oftentimes people feel with diet and exercise and lifestyle modifications that you should be able to overcome, right? But most everyone has either struggled with hypertension or knows someone who's struggled with hypertension who needs medication for that. And so it's the same with, say, something like major depressive disorder. In a mild state, you might be able to overcome it and get through it with lifestyle changes and therapy and prayer and faith. But when it becomes more severe, you might need medication for that. Just as you would need medication for high blood pressure, even if you did all of the lifestyle modifications, and that's because we simply, for the overwhelming majority of high blood pressure, we don't know what causes it. And for depression, we know that medications can help and even be life-saving in situations, even though at its core, we don't know exactly how the brain is working. But the main thing to think about is that it's not changing the structure of the brain, and the medications for high blood pressure aren't changing the structure of the kidney or the heart, but they're making them work better. They're making them work the way they were intended to work. And so the medications for depression are helping your brain work the way it's supposed to, and one of the ways organically is through the concept of neuroplasticity and allowing it to create the pathways that something is blocking it from creating in the first place. So that's just the connection between something that we all experience or have known someone to experience to take medications for, that there might not be as much of a stigma around, and relating it to how the brain works and hopefully destigmatizing medication use for that.
I think sometimes people are afraid or ashamed to go seek counseling, but we seek coaching in every area of your life. If you go to the gym and you want to get certain gains, you get a coach. If you want to do better financially, you get a coach. If you want to do better in your business, you get a business coach, you get a life coach. All of these coaches, why not get a coach, see a counselor for your mental health, which is going to impact every single area of your life. And so there is no shame at all in it. In fact, I think there's great wisdom in it. And the older I've gotten, the thing that I've learned from people who I would consider mentors, some of them didn't share that they had that, but I come to learn that they've had it for decades because they knew that it was helpful for them. So I think in people just sharing it and being open to it, not talking about it like in hushed tones, but just being honest, I seek help for that, coaching in that, and sharing also the benefits in your life, why it is significant and important. So there's no shame in it at all, and I think it's incredibly wise to do.
And I think one of the things that I was thinking as I was preparing for this morning is that, it's really clear that in the Bible it says, trust God. And I look at therapy and medication and mental health as spokes in the wheel that lead me to trust God. Knowing that, John said it so beautifully a couple weeks ago in one of his sermons, that God is a part of what is happening. And when we are praying, we are asking for God to be in the midst of whatever is going on. And God is putting professionals like Dr. Serrato, like Wala-Neh, like me, like Dave, like John in the community, because we need to be able to have different spokes in the wheel to make the whole wheel work. And so being able to understand that, yes, go to prayer, but maybe prayer is going to lead you to a place where you say, I need some professional help. I need to be able to talk to my friends and family, but maybe you as a family member need to say, I think it's time that you speak to somebody different because this is out of my wheelhouse. This is not something that I can help with. I'm here to support you. And I would say that one of the things that happens when stigma hits, we all in this room might not be able to say we have a mental health diagnosis, but we all are impacted by mental health symptoms. We all know grief. We all know sadness. We all know separation. We've all lived through COVID, so we know what it's like to live in a space of unknown and be anxious about something that we don't know what is to come. So my number one thing is that mental health impacts us all. There is not one family that is absent from mental health illness and or symptoms. And whether you were raised in a household who talked about it or whether you didn't, the invitation through sort of hearing this, I mean, even this conversation, and Dave and I have had this talk, to be able to have a conversation like this in a faith community where we know that, yes, prayer is important. We know that faith is important, but there's no apologizing if you need faith and therapy. There's no apologizing if you are saying, hey, I'm feeling this, I'm really struggling right now, and I can't figure it out on my own. It's no different than taking your car to the mechanic because you don't know what that noise is. I'm not going to fix my own car. And so sometimes you're not going to be able to fix your own self. I mean, I could try, but it's not going to go very well. And so I think, the beauty of our community, we are sitting up here today representing For All Seasons and representing Peace of Mind. Sarah Rich runs Chop Tank Health Systems. They have behavioral health services for their clients, and they work, we all work together. There are more mental health needs than there will ever be mental health professionals in our community. But the main thing is to know that the services are here, and it is okay not to be doing okay because we've all been there. And it doesn't always mean that we have to sign up for therapy for 25 years. Maybe someone does because that's what they need and that's how they move through life. But it also might be that you're going through something that I call episodic therapy needs. So it might be an episode, it might be a blip on the screen, and you say, for now, in order for me to be able to move forward, this is what I need.
Amen.
I think it's important to recognize too, if some people who've prayed, maybe you struggle with anxiety or depression, you prayed for years and years and years, and you still struggle, prayer didn't fail you. It didn't fail you at all. In fact, when someone says, I'm going to see the doctor, I'm going to serve a surgeon, I always pray for the doctor and the surgeon. If you read through Proverbs, it says over and over and over to seek counsel, over and over and over again. And as Dr. Serrato said, we are embodied souls. We have a soul that is encased in a physical body. When Jesus was healing people in the New Testament and someone has something wrong with their body, he didn't say, what a loser you are. Like, you should have prayed harder. He didn't do that at all. He loved them, he cared for them, and he healed their physical body. We are embodied souls. So prayer didn't fail you. The Bible says, go seek counsel, go seek help from other people. And as Beth Ann said, these two things go together. And so prayer is a part of this physical thing that we're in right now. And as we talked about in Revelation, one day we will have renewed bodies and everything will be all good. But for right now, we don't have that. And so to seek help in both physical and spiritual is very, very biblical.
And when I think about mental health, and let's just start with looking at a diagnosis, right? And mental health providers will tell you that it's not always one particular cause for whatever the diagnoses may be. So you have someone who has major depressive disorder or generalized anxiety or issues of impacting their conduct. There can be many reasons why that diagnosis comes about. So with that said, and I think everyone's done a great job in terms of just sharing the interconnectedness, so I won't kind of repeat that. I will focus on kind of sometimes looking at the importance of maybe why this is happening, like the source, and trying not to mask the symptoms. So for example, like going back to the Bible, I think about David. So David, as we read the Psalms, David had some heavy stuff. David was going through some grief, some major depression, and David was struggling. David was crying out to the Lord. And if David had tried to take that journey on himself, and if David had tried to rush to maybe just, I don't want to get to the root of the problem, I just want to medicate and not go to therapy, he wouldn't have maybe discovered that the reason he was feeling that pain was because he committed adultery, he murdered, and sometimes there's a purpose to the pain. And as I don't want to get it wrong, I'm trying to think, either Pastor Dave or Pastor John, someone said a good sermon about going through the pain, staying with it. And I think sometimes we need to search our souls and ask God, is there something that I need to do? Is there someone that I need to forgive? That's why I have this feeling of anger. And when I forgive that person, that may leave. Is there some repentance that I need to do? Is there a certain sin that I'm walking in that's contributing to my mental health? And I want to make it clear that mental health, if you have a mental health condition, it doesn't always mean that there's something that you're doing that you did wrong, but sometimes it's worth exploring our spiritual health in terms of, is there something that maybe I could do? Repentance, making restitution, or reconciliation, and oftentimes, sometimes we may see the benefits of that as well.
This has all been really, really good. And I want to end with one more question. I know we're running out of time here. And again, we'll pick this up at a later time with maybe some more people up here as well, just kind of walk through some of the stuff in a different setting. What's one piece of advice that you'd give someone who's struggling right now? Like they're here today and they're hearing this and they're like, I'm just not sure what to do, where to go. Obviously, we have great agencies up here and great support systems, but what's one piece of advice that you'd give somebody right now that's just struggling with this in their life?
I think to recognize that there are overwhelming amounts of people that want to help. It's just that many of us aren't fortunate enough to have people in our lives that check in on us regularly. And so if we don't have that, we think, well, people don't care about us or want to help. But it's been my experience that when people finally do take that step to ask for help, there's a rush of people in their lives that want to willingly help them. And so I would just say to know that that's out there. Even if someone isn't checking in on you regularly or you're not feeling that people do want to help, and you'll be surprised how quickly it will happen if you ask.
I would say you're not alone and you're loved. You're not alone and you're loved. And I think about the value of community in mental health. And that's one thing I really love about Anchor Church, because Pastor Dave really emphasizes community. And I think there's so much benefits to our mental health when we know we belong to others, when we know that there's someone we could go to. For example, John shared about his battle with anxiety. And I think when we hear that other people have mental health struggles as well, and we don't feel that there's something wrong with us, because everyone is dealing with something, like Beth Ann says, to some degree, we have this sense of things being normalized. There's not something strange about me because I'm dealing with this. My battle may not be your battle, but we all have a particular battle, or we're carrying someone else's battle. So I would just say you're not alone and you're loved.
I would say that the most important thing I would want people to know that are listening online or that are here is that it is okay that you're questioning if you need to reach out. It is okay in the moment if you're scared. And that when you reach out, this community, as I was thinking through how we all operate, if someone has reached out and needs something and Dave calls and says, I need to refer someone, that's as far as it goes. There is a confidentiality that sits really in an important place. So being scared to reach out is absolutely okay. Knowing that when you reach out, you're going to be connected to the right person. Whether you call John, whether you call Dave, whether you called me, whether you call Wala-Neh, the story stays. It is not a community gossip session afterwards, because I think sometimes people are worried, if I say something, then everyone's going to know. So I can speak for the community here sitting up on this platform today that when you reach out, Your story is your story. It is not our story to share. And if you are someone who is struggling, there are 800 numbers, there are agency numbers. You can call John, you can call Dave, you can call me, you can call any number of folks, because this is a place where community is also connecting people to resources. And just knowing that when you reach out, your story stays your story. It doesn't become a topic of conversation. It doesn't become something that is shared amongst the community, but the community has the resources so that when you're not doing okay, we can help point you in the right direction. And the promise is this: if somebody calls me and says, I need X, Y, or Z, and my agency can't provide it, but I know that I can call Sarah and say, there's a community member who needs something different, can you help? That's the beauty of the way that this community works, is that we're not going to leave you without a warm handoff to someone who can help.
Yeah, I would say talk to people. You are not a burden. You might feel like it is in going to talk to someone, that I'm just like dumping all of this on them and I'm a burden to them, but you're not. So my thing would be just to talk to people. 4 years ago, I was in small group, and it was still in the pandemic, and so we were online doing the Zoom call, and I was not in a good space at all. And I thought I was doing well. I was leading the conversation, asking questions, trying to give reflective feedback, but not doing well. And in the middle of it, not long into it, actually Melissa up in the tech booth, she emailed me and just said, I don't have your cell, or I would text, is everything okay? Just checking, you seem a bit anxious. And so in the middle of small group while it's happening, I'm like, why? And she never emails me, never has before, never has sent. But she saw something, God put it on her heart. And so, so you being around people will give God the opportunity to use other people to see something might be wrong, and they will help carry you, and you can help carry other people. But if you're like me, I'm an introvert, and my natural propensity is to always pull away and to not put myself in community and to share. And so I make the conscious decision to do that. So I want to encourage you to be with people, allow people. So God used Melissa that day, and I took a screenshot of that and got teary last night reading it. Just so it was just an incredibly kind, I believe, God sent email, just checking. And then while small group was still going, I then texted Beth Ann, and I wrote her. I said I need to connect with a counselor for long-term growing anxiety that's become unmanageable. I'm wondering if you had any advice on that. And she texted back immediately, who is this? Her phone had been stolen and lost all of her contacts. I forgot she posted on Facebook. She did, that's all of it's right here. I said, it's me, it's John. I said, this is what's going on. And I'll tell you this was at 5:43 in the evening. And the next morning, I was in the office talking to somebody. And so when Beth Ann says, reach out, there are people who care. We are here in this office every single day. You are not a burden. We're here for each other. If you look in Acts chapter 2, we are meant to carry each other's stuff. That's what we do. Come to Grief Share, we carry each other's stuff. That's what we do. And Beth Ann said, you can make a phone call. And within hours, I was talking to someone. And so yeah, you're not a burden. Please be with people, and please talk, share.
Guys, I just want to thank these panel up here. You just give them a round of applause. I know we just touched a piece of it today. There's so much more that we could go over. More people could be involved in this discussion. We will do more of this in the future, because I think it is helpful for us to get to this. I do want to encourage you in this, going through something, to reach out, whether it's to here at the church, whether it's to go professional help out there and integrate some resources out there to help you connect with these guys as well. We believe in this. This is a help for us as a community of individuals to walk through life together and to help one another, as John just said. And so I want to encourage you in that.